Welcome to another Founder of Wisdom Pod. We have James Bishop today with us. I'm excited because we're going to talk about podcasting, creator economy, and everything in between. Me and James were pre-talking about Ironman's biohacks and everything in between. Also, James started his first company in 2009, was called Hire the Barman. We're potentially going to talk about that as well. He's live from London. London is one of my favorite city. So yeah, we might talk a bit about no code also in between. That is another overlap that I see here, James. So James, can you briefly introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about yourself and one fine play.
Thanks for having me on the pod. It's an honor. I run a podcasting company in London. I've been doing that for about 5 years. I have been dabbling more recently, as you say, in no code and in the content and creator economy more generally, because I'm a little disillusioned with podcasting. And I have been self-employed for 17 years. This is my second venture. And really, the thing that connects everything that I do is about maximizing the potential of ideas and the energies that people are putting into things.
All right. And why did you get into podcasting? Like, when's the first pod you listened to, and why did you decided to be like, oh, I'm going to start my own and A/B test that?
So I was actually working in television in the UK, and I was disillusioned by how difficult television was going to be. And I got into podcasting because I wanted to find a medium to share stories around the world where there were no barriers to entry of like money or location or, you know, the people that you know. I wanted to be able to create access to conversations. That led me into podcasting, and then it's just been a long, winding journey from then. I happened to do that about 18 months before COVID and before they sort of had a bit of a boom, I suppose, or they became popular for a while. So it was just kind of right place, right time.
And entrepreneurship, I see here, Hire the Barman. I also see Tipsy Panda Bar. So tell us about these first ventures.
Okay, yeah. So I moved to London when I was 24, and I was young and bright, and I saw the lights of the big city, and I was actually doing that during the recession in 2008. And I started a business hiring bartenders to people's events. I'd been a TGI Fridays bartender at university, so I knew how to make a cocktail. And I just took my skills from there, and then that rolled out a whole business over the space of 5 years that scaled up and ultimately led to me running bars at all kinds of festivals, including Glastonbury Festival, which is a well-known festival here in the UK. And then ultimately I sold that in 2014 for varying reasons, but I kind of got tired. It was a really good kind of vocational degree. I learned a lot about business, the do's and the don'ts. And so it was very hands-on. I made some big wins, some big errors, but ultimately I decided to sell that and put my energies into, well, what happened after I sold the business was that I wanted to teach myself all the things that I'd had to pay people to do in the first business, which, going back a while here, but like I wanted to be able to make a transparent background on a picture, or understand accounts, or learn how to make a video. These were all skills that I thought would be useful as an entrepreneur. And that was when I discovered I was a creative, basically. Before then, I hadn't really identified as one. And that opened up a whole world. And I taught myself to do that using YouTube. YouTube is still a massive passion of mine. I probably understand more about YouTube than I do about podcasting, if we're honest, even though I make a living out of podcasting. And yeah, just opened my eyes to so much stuff.
And how much suffering did you go through in your first businesses, and what did you learn from that?
Well, it's funny looking back, because I didn't realize how lucky I was, or I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, the naivety got me a long way. I didn't struggle because it was kind of pre-startup era, and I didn't know to be worried. I just kind of did stuff and it worked. I built a $500,000 turnover business on $500 of Google AdWords a month. That's how good Google AdWords was at the time. I didn't do any other marketing, didn't ever make a piece of content the whole time I was there. We didn't do cold outreach. We didn't do anything. We just ran Google ads. People replied, and that was as much business as we could ever keep up with. But I didn't know then how good that was.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
I had similar stuff happen to me with the Facebook ads agency, you know, right time at the right place. They just launched, although I think Facebook ads is still somewhat doing good if you know what you're doing there. The podcasting itself, generally speaking, how do you pick your guest, and how do you ask the right questions?
So I don't have a podcast myself. I just help other people to make them and produce them, and have a team of producers and editors and designers, and get commissioned to make shows. And so for us, all of those things are super strategic. You know, an average podcast for us has probably a $4,000 an episode budget, takes a team of 3 or 4 people, and an average episode's taking maybe a week to make. So there's a lot going into it, you know?
So it's case per case, but generally speaking, like, how do you filter great guests for these podcasts?
If you want me to be totally honest, we don't make podcasts based on guests. We make podcasts based on ideas and on hosts going on journeys. There are only 2 stakeholders in the podcast, you and your audience. And you kind of need 2 narratives. To make a successful podcast, it needs 2 narratives. A bit like you have Harry Potter and his friends, and then also this fight against Voldemort. And these 2 things evolve together. A good podcast does something similar. So you have you as a host, and then a journey that you're going on, and the listener gets to know both. And it reveals moments and things of interest to the listener as they evolve. And then guests basically to us become a way of helping to tell the stories of that journey. So if you're going on a journey, if you're going to discover something or learn something, and because what you're trying to do is build an ongoing narrative through multiple episodes. So we start with the ideas, and then how we're going to tie those episodes together with familiarity and with the host. And then we find guests that can help bring things to life within those episodes. And then guest comes down to having researchers.
So the synergy of the 2 guests, you know, me, I view it as 2 sources of energy, and if they can add up to one another perfect, some of them can even multiply together and create that magic like we see sometimes on the Joe Rogan podcast. Is it like a psychometrics thing in which you check if the 2 personalities have some synergies, or if one is less well versed in that area and the other is better versed, and vice versa, and then they can create even better and more excitement on that? Is it good question askers and good thinkers?
Good question askers. Being good at the craft of being a host is definitely part of it. Good research calls, knowing the guest in advance, being able, you know, we get paid to make stuff, right? So we have to deliver results. So we pretty much know what people are going to say because we've done enough research calls and enough planning and scripting in advance before they say it. If you look at something like Joe Rogan, who is an outlier, right? He's an exception, not the rule. There are not many Joe Rogans in the world. He's doing 100 million downloads a month, and he's made 2,000 episodes of a podcast. Most people have made, I don't know, how many of you made 150? He's made, I'm guessing, right? He's made, there's just so many more that he's made like an episode every day. 2,000 is like an episode every day for, what's that, 5 years? That's lots of practice. You get good at it. He can have whoever he wants. But what's so powerful about something like that is, if you think about it, the listener only mainly turns up to the show because of Joe. And then he talks on certain topics. You know his political leaning, you know his style. And it's that glue between him and the listener that makes the show work. Because you trust Joe with your time. He's not going to let you down. Especially
3 hours, 30 minutes. And then people talk about YouTube shorts and get shorter and shorter. Well, yeah.
So there's this thing I would recommend, if you haven't read it, to read Alex Hormozy's $100 million Leads, the book, and he talks in there. It's so true. He put it better than anyone. Your content can never be too long. It's just too boring.
Yeah, there you go. So the techniques he uses on YouTube and the Mr. Beasts of this world, they just hook you back every 3 seconds. But yeah, sometimes Mr. Beast videos, I mean, the last one I checked, I think was the day before yesterday. I was kind of bored, just like this kid
the one with the cars.
Blowing up things. It's really boring. Did you like that one?
I don't like Mr. To me, I watch Mr. Beast videos to learn, to watch,
Same
to see
here.
what's going on in culture. They're not designed for me, though. I'm not really his target audience. I find it a bit boring. Yeah.
And who's his target audience? Is it like kids making $400 a year?
Well, I wondered this as well. I mean, at this point, he has 200 million people following him. So it's quite a broad audience. So he's just making general entertainment. But I don't like Saturday night television at 8 p.m. either. So it's probably more of a reflection of you and me than it is of his content. And it's of a certain type, like you say. He has built a technique and a style that is working right now, where he has 15 cuts in a video in the first 30 seconds. And he tells you the results of, he'll have a thumbnail, a title and a thumbnail. He will have given you the results, the answer to the title within the first 20 seconds of the video. You see the end of the video at the beginning. It's a whole new way of telling a story. I don't think I mean, it works for him. You can't argue with it, can you? Like, you see his views. But it's, I wonder how long it will last. Right.
And I mean, these podcasts of yours, you're investing 4K per episode, or your clients are investing 4K per episode. Like, how is that even possible? I guess it's like a Gimlet style, telling a story, lots of sounds, lots of cuts and so forth. And these are only audio, they're not even video?
Some are video, but some are audio. But we treat each one like a business. Most of them are at least cost neutral, if not making money. And they're pretty much all tied to business goals or a side business, or like attached to a business because it's the founder or whoever or whatever. It's not B2B per se, but they're delivering live events and merchandise and sales and community memberships and all that kind of thing. So they're not particularly sponsor reliant. Sometimes there are partners and sponsors and that kind of thing, but most of them are building commercial relationships with their audience. Right. And they're not all some are doing millions of downloads, but some are doing thousands, but they're doing thousands in a really niche target market.
So they get ROI of that 4K?
Yeah, but yes, but also not over the space of 12 weeks. It's like, it's a bit like 12 years exactly. Sometimes it's a long play. Like sometimes not every episode, not every show has that budget, obviously, but some have more, some have less. We've worked on all sorts, and they all have different results. But it's got to be targeted at something for us to be using it, working on it as a production company.
Right. So who do you target on your end? I see the pricing there on your website. It's all there, but how do you go with GTM? How do you get your new clients?
So lots of referral and recommendation for sure, especially with the talent-led stuff. So the famous people and the high net worth people, that helps. We do a bunch of cold outreach. So we find that cold email marketing is now super successful and works really well if you have a really clear offer and you drive to a lead magnet, and then that lead magnet opens conversations, nearly always based around talking to brands about how they're going to make more content and get more for less in terms of their standard content production. And then the podcast becomes a vehicle for them to really develop and grow that.
How do you go with sponsors? I'm guessing not all of them want sponsors. I'm guessing some of them pitch themselves. How do you go with that?
Yeah, not everyone wants a sponsor. That's their decision. In fact, I would say we tried to get people to have commercial strategic partnerships, but they're not all paid. No, but then you're selling your, most of the time if you're doing sponsor, you're selling your audience, right? It's compromised.
Right. What trends are you seeing from a last perspective? What micro trends are you seeing in the podcast world, and what macro trends do you see in the creator economy?
Okay, this is just my take. What's happened is with the recent introduction of AI, there's this whole wall of content that's just AI repurposed stuff, especially a lot of it coming from podcasting. And you see it on the social platforms, and it's not very good. People are recording a long conversation, they're cutting it up, they're posting it, they're using AI to make all of it, and it's getting low or zero interaction. And the people that, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk, who was very vocal about the idea of repurposing, they are now not repurposing anymore. They're coming up with an idea, and then they're making individual pieces of content contextual to each platform. And I think that's a big shift you're now going to see over the next like 12 to 18 months, is how do you get AI to help you to make original pieces of content for each platform, not just cut up stuff that already exists. Because just 40 seconds of another conversation cut up with no real context isn't going to capture people's attention and move it anywhere on social. That's what I would say is that's the biggest micro trend that I'm seeing if you are tracking to success.
Any softwares for that?
It's a combination of software and storytelling. Like, you still got to have a story, you've got to have brand, you've got to have strong characters. Like, storytelling doesn't change, you know? You got to take people, you got to build brand, you got to take people on a journey. If you're in podcasting, if you as the host aren't a big character in the show, then it's going to become difficult, because why would I go back to you? Like, you've got to give reason for someone to come back. You've got to give a reward, and you've got to get them to think, yeah, I really want to listen to more of this. I'm invested.
Love it. What are your top 3 goals this year?
The rest of this year, we're launching a new coaching product. That's definitely a goal. Finish decorating the house. We're renovating the house, which is a absolute mission. We're in the middle of having the electrics of the house done, so get that sorted. And Valencia Marathon sub 3 hours is the aim, December 3rd. That's my third goal. I don't know if you were expecting work goals, but I don't live life that way. So
no, I wasn't expecting like only work goals. I split my life into various areas. The sub 3 hours is quite bold, and that's quite impressive. So lots of training for you.
I should say I don't think I'm going to hit it, but I'm going to get close. It's the law of diminishing returns, isn't it? It gets harder and harder.
Yeah.
The faster and faster you want to go. Like, it's, I don't know, somewhere between 3 and 3:15 probably, but it gets, every minute gets harder to shave off.
Yeah, it's super hard. I'm watching Nick Bear trying to, I think he's aiming for 2:11 or 2:15, something quite bonkers. But yeah, it's.
I can't believe Patrick Langer, as much as I'm not a massive, this is a niche Ironman conversation, but he finished second at the Ironman World Championships last weekend or the weekend before. The guy can run a 2:20 something marathon off the back of a 180k bike ride.
Whoa.
Like, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's just bonkers right there. And yeah, you and I were talking about the ROI of these events. You know, you need to feel these mental ROI. It's not just for the purpose of doing it. I mean, it's cool to have a goal, right? But at some point, when is it gonna stop, you know? And also, what is your why when you're running? Mine is mostly to get mental benefits so that I can grow in other areas of my life. It's not necessarily to look good. It's not necessarily to accomplish a goal. You know, what does it mean, minutes? You know, what does time even means? Time is a perception.
It's interesting that you say that. So people have said to me, why do you want to run sub 3 hours? the main reason is because I'm in a group with two of my really good friends, and there's daily Strava data, there's a daily WhatsApp chat. It's all the social, it's the camaraderie, it's the accountability, it's all of the stuff that goes around the running that's probably more important to me than the running itself. It doesn't actually make any difference to me. I'd like to hit the goal, but I'm not that bothered if I don't, because the value I've got from this whole thing is actually a load of other stuff.
And are you in good shape? Like, are injury wise, are you fine on that tread?
Well, I just turned 40, and it's definitely getting harder on the body, but you know, you got to do all the sensible stuff though, right? You got to look after yourself. You got to stretch. You've got to you've got to put in the creatine. You've got to do all the little things to make the difference.
Sport massages, and mobility and weights, also weightlifting. James, thank you so much for the wisdom you've dropped today. Where can people find out more about you?
Jamesbishop.io is the easiest place. Or if you want to see anything work related, it's onefineplay.com.
And I am Charles Cormier, host of founderwisdompodcast.com. That was James Bishop.